Killer whale, a name to strike terror into seafarers in all the oceans of the world. The Romans called it orca, as indeed do some modern naturalists, trying to avoid calling it killer. But the word still means what the Romans meant by it, the demon from hell. It's really a dolphin, the largest of its group. A male can weigh up to 8 tons. The killer is no respecter of size. Sailors have often reported packs of them attacking great whales. Here, in a unique piece of archive film, a blue whale is harassed and mortally wounded in Baja California. Divers have feared killer whales since diving began. One famous treatise on diving, published as recently as 1963, said, "The only treatment for being attacked by a killer whale is reincarnation." And yet thousands of people gather daily to watch killer whale shows at Dolphinaria all over North America. It's not fear that draws the crowds, but something different. This little girl is deaf. She communicates in sign language, and what she's saying with her right hand is, "I love you." Whatever happened to the reputation of the killer whale? For as we shall see, killer it most certainly is. The transformation in public opinion from "I fear" to "I love" can be dated to a Canadian television news bulletin in July 1964. A killer whale had been shot to serve as the model for a life-size sculpture for Vancouver Aquarium, but it didn't die. Instead, it was towed by a line attached to a harpoon in its back to Vancouver Harbour and held captive in a makeshift pen. People were amazed at its docile behaviour. Thousands visited the harbour to gaze at the whale circling in the pool. Some wag named it Moby Doll. After 55 days, she began to feed, taking 200 pounds of fish per day laced with vitamin pills. Moby Doll was by then an international figure. The aquarium director, Dr. Murray Newman, was the scientist in charge.
And she's making various sounds which you're recording. Could you give us a listen to these?
Yeah, certainly. These were made with a hydrophone in the water.
Do you have any idea just what these noises might be in response to?
Oh, they may be curiosity on the part of the whale. They might be a sign of nervousness on her part, or she may be calling out into the water for others of her kind.
I gather it'll be some time then before you can classify these words and make this dictionary, which you hope to do eventually.
Yes, it will. What I intend to try and group these various sounds into their separate groups and play these back to the whale and see what response she makes to each particular noise.
Moby Doll died a month later after 88 days in captivity. At the autopsy, she turned out to be a young male, and voices very like his can still be heard in the open ocean off the coast of Vancouver Island. Here in Georgia Strait, Mike Bigg, Graham Ellis and John Ford pioneered the study of killers not as terrifying predators, but as sociable, vocal mammals living a complex family life in groups called pods. These voices are those of a group which they call J-pod. Each pod has its own dialect, a distinctive set of calls. In this area, round the south of Vancouver Island, there are 3 resident pods totaling between 80 and 90 whales. The dialect of J-pod is very like the voice of Moby Doll, recorded in 1964. A pod has a repertoire of about a dozen calls. A call started by one animal is usually taken up and repeated by the others. Although we are little nearer than Dr. Newman was to understanding the killer's language, we can recognize their dialects. This is where Moby Doll was harpooned over 20 years ago, and this is his surviving family. Further south, around the San Juan Islands, between Vancouver Island and the Washington coast, Ken Balcom is extending Mike Biggs' work into American waters. He finds that J-Pod is there too. Indeed, on many occasions, J-Pod finds him. The home range of this pod extends over 200 miles. And the whales make a full circuit about every 10 days. In many ways, it's an ideal pod to work with. It's regularly present and quite exceptionally tame. The structure of J-Pod is typical. 8 females with 7 calves of various ages are followed by 3 adult males, all of them sons of one or other of the females. Breaching like this, jumping clear of the water and re-entering with a loud splash, is almost certainly a social activity for communication within the group. The crash is audible for miles underwater. By constant following, Balcom was able to photograph and name all the members of the same 3 resident pods, identifying them by the shape of their fins and any scars on their grey saddles. His photographs were used in a directory to enable others to join in the work, though accurate identification is difficult without long experience. The results of Big and Balcom's work are just emerging. It appears, for example, that killer whales may live in the wild for as long as 70 years, but each female produces a calf on average only once every 10 years. The whales have their favorite fishing grounds where the salmon congregate in dense shoals. They know this stretch of water intimately, all the way from Washington into the Canadian waters, where they are watched by John Ford and Mike Big. There seems to be no territorial division between the pods. They usually fish as a family group, but at other times they gather together in a superpod with as many as 90 members. J-Pod is the most frequently seen, but another of the resident pods shows up regularly. They're known as K-Pod, and the largest male, K1, bears 2 notches cut into his dorsal fin in 1973. K1 was a fully grown adult male then. All along Haro Strait, between the San Juans and Vancouver Island, pleasure craft and cliffs alike provide a grandstand view of the whales as they pass. Whale watching has become a regular pastime in these parts. Many of the watchers contribute to Balcom's work by reporting whale sightings among the islands. But you don't need to live by the sea to watch whales. Today, they're a branch of show business, one of America's top box office draws. Opinions differ about the rights and wrongs of keeping killer whales in captivity as part of a commercial operation. Among the family parties and the razzmatazz, the whales are being used, some would say exploited, to provide entertainment. But there's more to it than that. The centerpiece of SeaWorld is Shamu Stadium, the biggest of its kind in the world. Here, crowds gather to watch the killer whales put on their show several times a day. It's noisy and exciting, a demonstration of the grace and power of these huge animals. As well as enjoying the spectacle, the audience admires the patience of the trainers and wonders how it's done. Training takes place between shows. It's not a matter of material rewards, nor is there any use of force. Whale trainers soon learn that whales are too independent to take bribes and too big to take orders. The whales are not rewarded by being given fish. They have all they want to eat all day. Their reward is the cheerful and sometimes strenuous interaction which they enjoy with their trainers, like a big dog with a human family. Some of the signals look obvious, but the response to them is very subtle and individual. If anyone else gestured like this to one of these whales, it would understand perfectly what was wanted and probably do nothing. The whale will respond actively only to a signal from someone it knows and trusts. Such communication between people and animals takes time to develop. Some animals respond to constant attention and interaction better than others. Compare, for example, trained dogs with cats and monkeys, which are notoriously difficult to train. Killer whales, as the SeaWorld trainers have discovered, respond even better than dogs. They show every sign of enjoying human companionship and of appreciating the variety which the trainers exert themselves to provide. There are 5 different types of activity session each day, including play and exercise, socializing with the individual trainers, and learning. They're offered in a random order. The whales are kept alert and entertained, partly because they don't know what to expect. The performances which develop from these sessions are almost all originally the whale's ideas. Indeed, it's often said that the animals show the trainers what they like to do, and then those ideas may find their way into the show. The impact on public opinion has been colossal. The days are gone when a killer whale trainer was regarded as someone on a par with a lion tamer, risking life and loss of limb by consorting with known man-eaters. These displays have changed people's minds. What the whales think of it remains a mystery. Are they tormented prisoners slowly going insane in the echoing confines of their pool, as some people argue? Others point to the whales. They look well-fed and lively, apparently content and in perfect health, seeming to enjoy the richness and variety of their daily life. The debate continues, but the captive killers appear to be at ease with their surroundings and their visitors. The shows which emerge from the daily training and interaction sessions are what draw the crowds. There is nothing to compare with the power and grace of killer whales at full speed and at close quarters. No 2 shows are the same. That helps to keep the whales interested. This particular stunt was invented by the whale himself during an exercise session and was built into the show within a year, once the trainer had mastered it. All the stunts, or behaviors as they're called, come from natural behavior such as might be seen any day in the wild. To entertain the crowd, some of the behaviors are exaggerated or extended beyond their normal duration, but physical play like this is a normal part of a whale's daily life. In the wild, looking round above the surface is called spy hopping. For the show, the whale prolongs the spy hop into a protracted survey. The perfect synchronization of their movements adds to the spectacle, but it too is natural, developed from their breathing routines when they travel. The unity of the pod grows from the mother-child relationship. Calves follow their mothers closely while the pod is on the move. Perfect coordination is a way of life among whales, and it's easy to encourage these displays. Whale shows like this, featuring healthy, well-cared-for animals in spacious surroundings, have converted humanity from fear of whales to respect, even love. But at SeaWorld, they have produced an unexpected bonus. For the first time, a mother whale has given birth and successfully reared a killer whale baby in captivity. They credit their success to the good relationship between trainers and whales. In learning to entertain the whales in their keeping, the trainers have found that spray is much appreciated. The killer turns out to be a sensual animal with thin, sensitive skin which responds to gentle contact. It seems to enjoy the hose pipe much as a cat enjoys being stroked. Looking after killer whales needs constant study to understand and anticipate their needs. When Candu, one of the SeaWorld females, became pregnant, the trainers spent 6 months teaching her to present her mammaries whenever she was touched in the right place, as she would be by the baby when feeding it. Captive whales had given birth before, but in each case the calf had died because the mother couldn't or wouldn't feed it. On September the 26th, 1985, after 15 months of gestation, Candu gave birth in front of the cameras, and this unique piece of film flashed around the world. The calf was named Baby Shamu after her father. She took her first breath unaided, and soon she was swimming strongly round the pool to the cheers of the SeaWorld staff. With another female in close attendance, just as in the wild, Candu was evidently relaxed and confident enough to feed Baby Shamu from the start, as she had been taught. Before her first birthday, Baby Shamu was taking part in the public display along with her parents. She didn't have to learn the routine or even the meaning of signals. As a baby whale, she naturally follows closely wherever the adults go. From a business point of view, Baby Shamu is undoubtedly a monumental asset. She's the star of the show. But she's more important than that. She demonstrates that it's possible to breed and rear killer whales in captivity. As more and more countries bow to public opinion and refuse to allow killer whales to be captured in their waters, Captive breeding will become essential if shows like this are to continue. Many dolphinaria have discredited the business by failing to take proper care of the animals in their charge. As a result, public sympathy in some countries, Britain for one, has moved towards banning shows like this altogether. But there is another side to the argument. Properly, and that means expensively, maintained captive whales will be an important factor in perpetuating the respect and love for these animals which has been generated by displays like this. The survival of wild whales depends on public opinion, and people respond more positively to pleas on behalf of an animal which they feel they know. The whales in the shows here and in other well-maintained dolphinaria have been called ambassadors for their species. With humanity threatening so much of the natural world, there is a need for ambassadors from that world to ours. It is arguable that animals should be born into the diplomatic service rather than forcibly recruited from outside. The good that such ambassadors have done is clearly visible in one magical site in Western Canada. The value to killer whales of the public sympathy which the captives have earned has been proved here in a remote bay in northern Vancouver Island. Near the bay, called Robson Bight, is a small cove known to whale scientists as the Rubbing Beach. The scientist who discovered it in 1973 was Ian McCaskey, a pioneer in killer whale research. It's a magical place and the site of some very mysterious behavior. Quite what makes it so attractive to whales is difficult to pin down. It's sheltered, and the bottom consists of smooth, flat pebbles, but that's true of other bays roundabout. The water is not especially clear, but that wouldn't matter to whales because they perceive their world through sound more than sight. It may be that the acoustic configuration of the bay is attractive to them in some way which humans cannot appreciate. Some drop in when they happen to be passing, the others come in from far away, making a beeline for the cove. All of them, when they arrive, rub themselves luxuriously against the smooth pebbles of the bottom. Underwater, their ghostly shapes glide out of the gloom with leisurely but deliberate movements. Scientists are at a loss to know quite what this behavior is. That it's something special is evident from the whales' voices. Nowhere else do they make sounds like this. The Rubbing Beach is one of only 3 places where a wild whale has been seen to give birth. The others were similarly isolated coves, one near here and one in the San Juan Islands. But the isolation of Robson Bight is coming to an end. In 1979, a new road opened up the north of the island to logging, previously only a limited concern. The timber is being extracted for building materials and to satisfy the ever-increasing demand for wood pulp to make paper. Clear felled hillsides nearby are a grim indication of what might happen to Robson Bight if the valley above it were to be logged. Already, the unique sounds which killer whales make while they are rubbing themselves have a continuous background of noise. The sound of the propellers of the logging boats making their way to the sawmills. Suddenly, it became urgent to protect the Rubbing Beach before the time ran out. Public opinion took a hand, and the seashore is now protected. There is a plan, soon to become law, to prohibit logging for 2 miles on either side of the rubbing beach and for a quarter of a mile inland. Now the scientists will have more time to find out what this place means to the whales. Their behavior is most unusual, but its significance is not at all clear. Some whales visit the beach alone, but most come in groups. Perhaps it has some social function. Explanations have ranged from the hygienic to the mystical. The whales might simply be grooming themselves, using the comfortably smooth pebbles to remove parasites from their thin and sensitive skins. Other researchers speak of sexual education as if the young whales and their elders were taking part in some kind of initiation ritual in the murky shallows. There is evidence of a sexual content to the whales' activities here, but nobody has yet come up with a fully convincing account of what they're doing. Whatever it is, the reprieve of the rubbing beach is a victory for whale scientists, for whale lovers, and of course for the whales themselves. "25 years ago, the logging would no doubt have gone ahead, and the whales might well have been systematically exterminated to protect the loggers. In 1955, the US Navy used machine guns to slaughter hundreds of whales off Iceland to protect the fishery. Today, after the transformation in public opinion, such an act would be totally unthinkable. What would once have been seen as an ominous gathering is now admired as a graceful underwater ballet. Interpreting the music of that ballet has been the work of John Ford, a Canadian biologist working with Mike Bigg at the West Coast Whale Research Foundation. His analysis of the whale sounds has provided a mass of information not only about whale behavior, but also about the identity of the whales and structure of their pods. Contact calls while the whales are traveling are unique to each pod. Ford calls these sets of signals dialects. It is clear that they are passed down the generations within each family group. Only 2 groups of mammals have the ability to imitate and learn sounds. One is dolphins, including the killer whale, and the other is humans. The intermittent clicking sounds made by all killer whales are used for echolocation like a form of sonar. The whale's massive brain is largely dedicated to interpreting the echoes of these clicks from underwater objects that include its prey. In addition to a dozen standard calls and the echolocation clicks, killers often slap the water with their fins or tails. One such impact was the prelude to a touching little episode between a mother whale and her young daughter. The mother is known as Sharky because of her truncated dorsal fin. She was trying to sleep, but the baby, in the way of all babies, wanted to play. Sharky made her feelings clear. She didn't want to be disturbed. The vocal background to this seemingly tranquil scene indicates Sharky's depth of feeling as she gradually loses patience with the infant. Child guidance experts tell us that we shouldn't worry about children getting enough rest. They will always take the sleep they need. Weary parents, including Sharky, might well argue that the children take the sleep the parents need as well. When all reasoning has failed, whale parents have been known to resort to chastisement. But in this case, Sharky seems to reply to the infant's expression of pique with a comment of her own. It's fanciful to try to interpret what the whales are saying. Their world is so different from ours that the dream of translating their language into human terms must remain very remote. No one really knows the significance of tail fluking, slapping the surface to produce a succession of resounding explosions. In Sharky's case, it looks like an expression of emotion. From time to time, the pod gathers together to rest. Now their voices change again to a soft murmur, reassuring in sound. A pod might lie drowsily on the surface for several hours, breathing every 30 seconds or so, muttering to each other all the while in subdued voices. At regular intervals, the whole pod dives, swimming slowly underwater in line abreast for 5 minutes at a time. The dreamy calls seem to coordinate these dives, keeping the pod close together at all times. But why this togetherness is important to an animal with no natural enemies is another of the killer whale's mysteries. When the pod makes contact with salmon, the voices and the behavior change abruptly. The pod splits up into small groups which charge off in an uncoordinated scramble for food. The calls may simply be excitement, or they may also serve to keep the whales in contact with each other. Individuals can wander miles from the group in the exhilaration of the chase. Fishermen will often say that whales hunt as a team, driving the salmon into a bunch so that each whale can take its turn at feeding. But the scientific evidence suggests that it's catch as catch can, and every whale for itself. There's no shortage of food. Here, close to the shores of Alaska, there are enormous numbers of salmon returning to their breeding rivers every summer. That's a male killer. His dorsal fin can reach 6 feet in length. This was filmed in 1987 in what was then an unknown inlet called Prince William Sound. Then the sound was silent on the surface. Underwater, it was alive with the calls of feeding pods and the buzz and rattle of their sonar. Prince William Sound was a favourite haunt of killer whales because of the abundance of food in summer. Now, after the worst oil spill in American history, its future is uncertain. There are signs that the salmon are returning, but it's too soon to be sure in what numbers. It lies at the head of the Gulf of Alaska. Here, in the western part of the Sound, there were 10 pods which visited regularly, totaling about 170 animals. Now, who knows? Some pods spent the whole summer in the Sound, but others visited only briefly. At other times of year, the same pods were seen near Kodiak Island to the west and in southeast Alaska, a feeding range of over 600 miles. The work of following and photographing the Alaskan whales led to the identification of some true residents, pods which are seen year after year in the same areas of the Sound. Like the killer whales further south, they keep in contact as they travel, not only by calling, but physically as well. The whales are not the only predators on the salmon. During the short summer season, the fishing boats used to be out in force. Seine net fishermen had no trouble from the whales, but longliners claimed to have seen them taking fish from their hooks. Faced by competition, they fought back. The white notch in the leading edge of this dorsal fin is a bullet hole. Evidently, the great transformation of human attitudes towards killer whales is not quite complete. One of the Prince William Sound researchers, Craig Matkin, found that while some killer whales were hard to approach, others took a close interest in his boat. One young female, nicknamed Bubbles, paid frequent visits whenever Matkin was passing. Whale watchers all down the west coast of North America know another, less friendly type of killer whale. The scientists call them transients, to distinguish them from the resident pods. Transients appear only fleetingly in other parts of the killer's range, but in Alaska they're seen in 1/3 of all whale encounters. They are known to differ in several ways from the sociable fish-eating residents. For one thing, their small groups travel almost silently. Their voices, if they call at all, are distinctly different from the residents. But most of the time they move without calling for a very good reason. They feed primarily on other marine mammals. Their main prey has ears. Typically, they sneak around headlands searching bays for unwary seals. They can cover large distances. One pod was seen in Alaska in June, and in the San Juan Islands, nearly 800 miles away, only 3 months later. Transients reveal another side of the killer whale's Jekyll and Hyde character. Here in Baja California, a group of them was seen attacking a young blue whale, a violent and bloody scene often reported but never before seen on television. Some scientists wonder whether they may not even be a different subspecies of whale. Scenes like this were responsible in the past for the fear felt by sailors of killer whales. If they can tear a great lump out of a blue whale, what can they do to a man? But the fact remains that there has never been a properly documented deliberate attack by a killer whale on a human being. However, residents as well as transients will capture and eat marine mammals if fish is in short supply, and in the most spectacular way. At Punta Norte, in the far south of Argentina, Juan Carlos Lopez is the resident scientist. He has become familiar with what was once regarded as very uncommon behavior. The whales patrol the water's edge in search of fish. They can come close to shore because the beach drops off steeply to water deep enough for them to swim in. Lopez uses the same identification technique as the North American researchers, checking the fin for scars and noting the shape of the grey saddle. For most of the year, he records the comings and goings of a few small pods of whales, observing their feeding habits and their breeding success. He finds that this inshore fishing is a regular way of getting food for the family. This particular family group is here throughout the year. It has 3 members, a female with a calf and a large adult male with a slightly curved fin. The male comes inshore to hunt, while the other 2 wait a 1/4 of a mile offshore. Periods of cruising along the beach alternate with violent activity as the whale locates his prey. The gulls hover around the successful fishermen, as they do everywhere in the world, looking for scraps. Occasionally, a fish sprints for safety right into the surf, followed by the whale. He is nearly 30 feet long. nearby sea lions are untouched but visibly alarmed. The steep beach and the strong surf make it relatively easy for the killer to inch back into his element. Once there, he resumes fishing. But he's been very close to a form of food which is more nourishing and easier to catch than fish: sea lions and their young. This is how predators learn to take new prey. The shape of the beach at low tide is going to be very important in what happens next. The reef of beach rock is split in one place by a deep channel which leads all the way up to the high tide mark at the edge of the shingle beach. At high tide, the sea lions are perfectly safe when they swim over the rocky shallows. But it is as well for them to know exactly where they are. If they drift over the channel or sit in the surf at its head, the killer whale's sonar will detect them. Attacks like this occur all the year round, but they're often unsuccessful. Although they probably developed by chance from the inshore fishing technique, they are now a regular part of the Patagonian whale's repertoire of hunting methods. The peak of their success is in March and April, when the growing pups are becoming adventurous but are still naive. Hanging in the water immediately in front of the whale's jaws looks foolhardy, but the adult sea lion knows to an inch where the edge of the rock is underwater, and the whale won't or can't cross the line. The adults know the score, but the youngsters are inexperienced, and it is they who come to grief. The one authenticated attack by a killer whale on a human happened to a surfer in California. He was apparently seized experimentally, the victim of a young whale's curiosity. The whale dropped him at once, as if it realized its mistake. The surfer was not seriously injured. These sea lions are not taken by mistake. The whales know what they are. A sea lion pup is a suitably sized meal for a killer whale calf. The male takes his prey out into deeper water where his mate and their calf are waiting. Sometimes the female comes inshore as well, but it's the male which does most of the hunting, several times a day during the sea lion's breeding season. The losses to the sea lion population as a whole are not significant. But to the whale family, when fish is in short supply, sea lions are a valuable supplement to their diet. At Punta Norte, it's not only sea lions which fall victim to the whales. They also take much larger prey. On the same beach, a small colony of elephant seals breeds each year. As the young males approach the end of their first year, they spar to determine their pecking order for future seasons. The conflicts are ritualized. They're rehearsals for the real thing in 2 or 3 years' time, when the senior bull will have the right to mate with every female he can defend. Although very little damage is ever done, the tussles are important because they determine the young bull's social position. They also tend to distract his attention from immediate events, like his position on the beach. These sparring bull calves weigh just under half a ton each. A 27-foot killer whale weighs 6.5 tons. Here's the attack again, slowed down this time. The struggle for status was too absorbing for the bull with his back to the sea. He failed to react to the obvious panic of his rival. The male carries the still living seal out to his family 400 yards offshore. Lopez's observations suggest that the young whale is often given the seal to kill as part of its training for life in these waters. Elsewhere in the killer whale's range, only transients take mammals such as seals as food. Here, the opportunity and the need occasionally produce the same behavior in resident whales. The gulls and giant petrels gather round the kill like marine vultures. The comparison is apt. The killer whale is the tiger of the sea, the top predator in an unforgiving environment. In all the oceans of the world, its social behavior and its evident intelligence, together with its size and its power, make it invincible. Only mankind has ever challenged the killer's supremacy. Like the tiger, the lion, or the polar bear, the killer whale has been misjudged by the one species which is unable to accept its mastery of an alien habitat. But as the young whale rises to take the prey its father has provided, it's growing up into a generation of whales which has won the understanding and protection of our species, which only a short while ago was killing the killers out of misplaced fear. The human race owes much to Moby Doll for our new understanding of the killer whale. And the race of whales owes the captives, their ambassadors, even more. We consider our understanding new, but it is old among humans. The people who know the killer whale best, the American Indians of the Pacific Northwest, have respected it and regarded it as an ally for thousands of years. One clan in particular takes the killer whale as its totem. They tell this story. Natslane was a great and respected hunter who liked to go hunting with his 3 brothers-in-law. The brothers were jealous of his success. They left him on a reef to drown when the sea came in. The youngest brother didn't want to leave him, but he was unable to help. A bird appeared and took Natslane to a secret world inside the reef. There were people there who put him in a bubble to drift safely ashore. Natslane's wife was sent for and told to bring his tools to him in secret. He carved a mean-looking monster which he called Keat. I have carved you to avenge a wrongdoing. 3 men will be in a canoe. Kill the 2 bad ones, but spare the youngest. The killer whale executed the two brothers and swam the youngest back to the shore. Natslane then ordered Keat never to harm man again and let him loose into the sea. The rest of us have begun to understand him only in the last 20 years.